flag. That's a flag. Awesome drive, man. Awesome drive.
It's nice to close out a race like that. That was awesome.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to 2023 season episode 18 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. As always, this podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media in 2014. Each weekly episode of the podcast offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and a lineup of special guests throughout the year. This week, we'll break down the number 12 team's run in the NASCAR All-Star Race at North Wilkesboro Speedway.
You mean the paint drying 200?
Oh, we'll get into that, Steve.
That's what my wife called it. I didn't even. She came up with that. The paint drying 200.
So that may have been the case as far as the Cup Series race goes, but I did want to talk to you about the week or weekend as a whole, because I do think it's important to maybe look at the whole or the whole picture instead of just maybe the one race. And even drivers, it seemed like across the board regardless of what people maybe thought of the Cup Series race, the drivers seemed to have a lot of fun. A lot of Ryan's quotes after that was like, man, I might have finished 6th, spoiler alert, but I still had a lot of fun. The Cars Tour race, the Truck Series race, I thought everything put on a good show. And I just told you all weekend long, I bet the people there that are there in attendance are having a really, really good time.
We always say that about going to the race. I mean, going to the race is a whole different experience because there's so much more to it, sights and sounds. Definitely a nostalgic aspect to it, and I think that's part of what the weekend was about, was the nostalgia and bringing back that nostalgia. It was like bringing history alive, in many ways. And truthfully, I don't think in the long run, I mean, I was asking people this question, was it the car or was it the track? We all really, really know it wasn't the track. It's the car. And the car's problems with short track racing. There were some guys that were shifting. There were some guys that put it in a lower gear and never shifted, but they were in a lower gear, so they didn't have as much off throttle time. So there was just a lot of things like that the car did, and it caused the racing to be, not as good as it should be or could be. But like I said, the nostalgic end of it and the getting that kind of feel of the atmosphere there. TV did a great job with some of the camera views and angles and things that you saw about the track, because nobody's been there in so long, that there's a whole group of eyes watching it that have never seen that track before. So it did a lot of good things in that manner.
One thing that I'm definitely happy about and it was worried about going into this was just the logistics of getting everybody in there. I know it was only a crowd of about 30,000 or so people, which for, a major cup event or something like that, it might not seem that big, but, the track is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't a lot of access to it as far as, major highways, that kind of thing. And they're really stressing to people to get there as early as possible. They even had a concert really early in the day to try to get, a majority of people there before it started. Sounds like logistically, parking situation, in and out went really, really well. So that's good to hear. It wasn't like a first Kentucky race situation or something like that. Like you said, it was all about the nostalgia. Dale Jr., was really pushing for this really simplistic format, saying that, the format shouldn't be the focus, the track should be the focus. And I think they were really successful on all of that. The race itself, someone ended up hitting on a setup that a setup in a racing line. And this happened. So I say spoiler alerts already, everyone mostly knows Kyle Larson goes on to win this race and kind of spanks the field. But he mentioned, he won the truck race earlier in the week, and he said he kind of found a line to run that involved running down on the concrete that not everybody was able to do. And it kind of sounds like he kind of went back to his crew chief, especially after they struggled in practice. They kind of talked about that line he was running in the truck race and set the car up to do that. And so I do agree with you. Definitely a mixture of the short track package with the next gen car is not that great, but I think they also hit on a setup and a racing line that nobody else was really able to figure out. So that just kind of, just really, really made it a struggle for anybody else to keep up, including his teammates who he lapped. So, going into this race, I thought, or even coming out of this race, I just wanted to point out some things since you talked about it being the paint dry. Paint dry 200. And I do want to remind a lot of people that are already saying, oh, we got to do something. We got to fix this. We have to do this stuff. I did have 5 points here that I've written down that I want to talk to you about that I would say old school or longtime fans, or, I listen to an extreme amount of podcasts, and then also, the NASCAR XM channel to hear people talk about this all the time. But here's some 5 things that we had that people have been asking for that we had in this race. A short track. People always constantly talking about more short track. So here we go. We go to a short track. I'm going to call this tire / lap time fall off. The tires held up, but they definitely were important to get fresher tires. And there was lap time fall off, 2 to 3 seconds from fresh tires to the worn out tires. Constantly, all I hear is people complaining about stage racing. So pretty much no stage racing except for that one break in the middle, and they didn't do a crazy format. So we got that. And, it's definitely in some of the other races, but it did happen in the Cup race too multiple times. To pass, this was like a single groove track that people have been calling for at Bristol again. So we get this single groove track where if you get to somebody's bumper, your best way of passing them was to try to move them out of the way, which is a little bit harder with the next gen car, but people were still able to do it. So you had all 5 of those things. The only thing that we didn't get that people have been kind of screaming for is more horsepower. So all I will say is you got your short track, you got lap time and tire fall off, you got guys having to move each other for passing. I forgot the 5th one was less grip. There was less grip in the track because the track was so old. You got all of those things, and what did we end up with? Race leader that ran away and nearly lapped half the field in this race. So all I say, be careful what you wish for, because you got everything except for more horsepower, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, the passing part of it, you had to get underneath them to the left rear quarter panel to actually nudge the guy out of the way. Yeah. You couldn't hit him from behind. That didn't work. As we get, how extensive we'll go in the report here, but once we get into the report, there's some passing that happened that was based on tires. And when you talked about the tire wear, that was the problem with the last segment. 100 laps, and then there was actually 90 laps after they started that segment, 90 laps left in the race when it went green. There was no caution. So there was no strategy on 2 tires or 4 tires, which would have been dangerous depending on how many laps were left. Nobody could come in and pit and then try to gain the track position back, because the track is just too short. They would have lost too much ground, even though they may have been faster by 2 seconds a lap. So those type of things never really came into play the way you'd want them to. And somebody said something that was really kind of funny but true. At the race had 24 drivers in it. Okay, and 24 of the best. Well, there's 12 guys missing, and I hate to say this, but some of those 12 guys that were missing are the guys who always call us the natural cautions that give us the late race, restarts and so forth, and the late race pit strategies and so forth. So that kind of hurt things too, because like I said, that 90 laps was 90 laps of tire conservation. Who's better at conserving their tire? And the reality is they are all pretty good at it, and they all pretty much knew what line they needed to run to conserve tires. And Larson spanked the field in the first segment, but in the second segment, his gap over second place was 2 to 3 seconds the whole time. Even though he lapped a couple of the back markers, it was 2 to 3 seconds. And it's really funny is on the NASCAR app, there is a way to compare drivers, and you can compare them on what positions they were running in. You can also compare them on lap times. And I put Ryan's and Kyle Larson's in there to look at it. And one's a blue line and one's a yellow line. And the 2 lines were almost next to each other the whole last 90 laps. One guy went up a hair and the other down a hair. When I say up a hair and down a hair, I'm talking a 1/10 of a second. So he ran lap times as good as the leader the last 90 laps, but couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of why we call it the paint drying 100.
Yeah. And it's also one of those things that I forgot to bring up too, is the fact that And I've heard a lot of this in the wake of this race is that, people are like, especially the TV commentators and radio commentators that have been around a long time, they're like, did nobody do their research as to what a race at North Wilkesboro was like? This is a track where I think it was in 94, Jeff Bodine lapped the entire field. So it's like, this is what happened isn't unprecedented. And it's another one of those calls for the, man, I wish racing was like it used to be. Well, here you got a taste of it.
True. This is a generational problem though, too. You're talking about the people that are older than me, who watched racing back, didn't mind that kind of thing. They enjoyed it. They thought part of the deal. They followed racing at the grassroots level. They saw that happen all the time. The audience that NASCAR at least acts like they're trying to gain and grow is the action audience, the audience that you don't want them changing the channel. You want there to be enough action constantly so that they don't switch the channel to another channel. And that's where stage breaks came from. Okay. They decided at some point that they didn't want the whole field getting lapped. So let's do a stage break and let's do a second stage break so that the third stage, even if the third stage is a little longer than the first and two, we're not going to see 20 cars a lap down in the third stage, maybe only 10, or, guys who had a crash. And that's where that came from. So by doing this whole thing this way, and like you said, these are pluses for the people that you're talking about. Yes, they were ones that complain. That's what their complaints were. Don't do anything gimmicky. For an all-star race.
And then here we go needing it. We needed the gimmick.
This was the situation where they probably needed the gimmick. Can you imagine if they'd have come in and said, okay, you guys get 3 sets of tires. Okay, we're going to run a 50-lap stage, a 30-lap stage, a 20-lap stage, and a 10-lap stage. Okay, that's the complete lappage. So in other words, the caution laps don't count in between. And you get 3 sets of tires for those 4 stages. What are you going to do? When are you going to use them? When are you not going to use them? Are you going to save them for this stage? You're going to put them on, for the last 10 laps? Or are you going to be out of tires by the time you get to the last 10 laps? But you're going to be out front, and you only used 20 laps on the tires you had. So how much did you use them? Do you stay out? Those, gimmicky. Yes, it's gimmicky. But unfortunately, like I said, it's the car, not the track. Once again, I want to say that. I mean, the track is, Larson found some grip on concrete, but then again, everybody started doing it too as the race went on. Everybody saw what it did, and they did it. So the track wasn't the difference. The car is the problem, and they still haven't figured it out yet. I heard there's a softer tire coming to New Hampshire.
Yeah,
so that may make a difference. That's a mile track. We'll see if that makes a difference at that track, but.
So I know I've been pushing the recap off because I'm thinking, in the main race, there's not really that much to talk about, but there actually is a lot to talk about leading into the weekend when we're talking about the pit crew challenge and then their heat races in the rain and that kind of stuff. So let's jump in and see what you got. If you have any notes from the pit crew stuff, and then we'll continue on.
Friday at 4, they started with a 50-minute long practice. Ryan, I noticed, had an in-car camera right off of the bat, which was really cool, knowing that he was going to have an in-car through the weekend. On the first lap, the 99 car spun out. And I thought, oh boy, because Josh actually kind of laughed on the radio at some point, because I thought, oh man, in the next couple of laps, how many guys spin out, but really nobody did. Early on, his single lap time was 16th best, and it was like a half a second off the leader, who was the 5 car, of course. Ryan was super loose, wrecking loose. They pitted after 8 laps and was down to like 23rd fast at that point. With 15 minutes in, they came back out, and they pretty much, I think, ran to the end here. Jonathan tells them the lap times are way faster now, over 0.2 faster. 20 minutes in, he had 21 laps on the tires. Oh, they did bring it in again here, so they brought it in one more time, and once again, it's still like the 26th lap, but about half hour in here. They came back out, and he tells them to run 15 laps. If you're not happy, then come back in. We'll work on it some more. But then he tells them, he says, I think the last few laps have been pretty reasonable compared to other people. Then they tell him, if you're happy with it, we can keep going. And, there were some cars that came back out with another set of tires too at this point. And Ryan says, I wonder if everybody's as loose as I am. But after they ran about 60 total laps. So this last segment, they ran over 30 laps. And this is important because they're going to end up being the fastest 20 lap average, the fastest 25 lap average, the fastest 30th lap average. So whatever adjustments they made in the first two times out were really good. They did,
normally we're really nervous when they come in early because we've kind of noticed the way this team approaches practice. They usually try to just go out there and run as many laps as they possibly can. And we know there's a problem if they come in after just running a handful of laps. And that's what we were looking at here. But as you said, they recognize that. They came in, made some adjustments. I think you said came back in, made some more adjustments, and then they go long. And seeing those average times made me feel a whole lot better about the outlook for the weekend.
Yeah, because I pretty much thought that was going to be long green flag runs to boot. So the pit crew challenge, Brian went out, I think, 31st or 32nd. They were the 7th fastest.
Woohoo!
Yeah, until the penalty. And this penalty was, there's a guy checking to see how tight the lug nuts were on, and
basically,
it was Ryan Flores because it was the right front.
Yeah.
So it was the first one he put on, and it's what do they call it? Chug-a-lug. That's what on the podcast that he does with Corey LaJoy. Corey will say how many chug-a-lugs, 1 chug-a-lug, 2 chug-a-lugs. So he must have come off the gun just a hair early. It makes me wonder. I know texted this to you at that point in time. It makes me wonder how often this actually happens during the race, where that's not exactly tight, and it really don't matter. It's tight enough, but maybe not tight to their specs. But they can't check that during a race. The only way you would know is if it fell off, and that would have to be really loose for it to fall off. So it just makes me kind of wonder if this happens all the time up and down pit road, every race, where there are guys that leave pit road where it's a little loose, and
I would not doubt if they already have this kind of down to a science at this point where they know how long maybe a wheel could handle being slightly loose. Maybe if they know there's only 20 laps left in a race, maybe we can get away with it. I mean, there's a lot on the line here. One, it's a short track and you want to get your team to start up front in these heat races to get a good start for the main event. There's also $100,000 on the line for the winning pit crew, which, I know those guys are paid pretty well, but that's still a big deal. There was a trophy involved. I mean, there was a lot of bragging rights in there, and yeah, unfortunately looked really good. I'm like, okay, that's going to set us up really good for the heat. But, and this wasn't, I'm not making excuses, but there was penalties from the beginning, all the way from the beginning, all the way to the end of this pit crew challenge. So there was a lot of issues up and down, especially with this specific thing on the weight.
One other interesting note I took of this whole thing was that they showed you when the teams came out, they showed you where they ranked. And I believe Ryan's was the 14th best. Okay. The car that won the pit crew challenge, 54, his pit crew was the 12th ranked team up and down pit road. So they were the 12th ranked team, and yet they won the thing. So just goes to show you that, you can have a good one, you can have a bad one. Truthfully, Ryan's was a really good one. If that thing is just a hair tighter or whatever it needed to be, 7th best would put him, that much further up in his heat race. He would have been, what's that, 1, 2, 3, been the fourth spot in his heat race instead of the 9th spot. So, the heat race went pretty well anyway. He ended up in heat 1, which was really cool because heat 1 was all the inside line guys, and during the race itself, the inside line guy was the better line to have on a restart. So all 3 of the Penske cars were in heat 1.
Yep.
60 laps. They started on the wet tires. That was kind of exciting. They had a competition caution somewhere about lap 30 here. So the 9 was leading his heat. Or the 9-9, I'm sorry, was in front there. The 9 was also, Ryan was in P9. Lap 5, he passed the 29, got to 8th. At lap 6, he passed the 47, got to 7th. At lap 8, he passed the 2, got to 6th. At lap 10, he passed the 11, got to 5th. And at lap 13, he tells him it's a little tight there. And And lap 23, they tell him some guys are downshifting if you want to try it. At lap 27, the 99 got the lead back from the line. Ryan says he's tight in traffic. He's trying not to burn up his stuff. Once again, all they're worried about is tire wear, even with the wet tires. Lap 32, he said the right front is destroyed, and they get the comp caution at lap 33. Tells them it's way too tight. There's no stagger in the tires. Now, mind you, this is a non-competitive pit stop too, because of so they're asking if it's dry enough out there to run the slicks. He says, I think there is a lane, but they tell them wet tires only. So they had to run the whole heat race in the wets. Jonathan asks Ryan for a number. Now, usually when Jonathan asks Ryan for a number of how tight it needs to be or whatever, it's usually 1 or a half or maybe 1.5. Ryan said 3. So this ends up being a big adjustment. There's a wrench in the window for this, sure. On the restart here, Ryan 99 takes the bottom. Ryan takes the bottom here. The restart lap 41, and he gets to 5th. At lap 44, he passes the 9. He gets to 4th. At lap 50, the 11 and the 20 pass him, so he goes back to 6th. The 99 wins heat 1. Ryan ends up in 6th, which will put him 11th for the actual feature on Sunday. He says it was too loose, so they adjusted, but it was too much.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're talking about the rain that was going into these heat races. They focused on really drying pit road, dried the track a little bit, but from what I understand, they couldn't actually put the real jet dryers out on the track because they were doing a lot of patchwork. This was a nearly 40-year-old surface and tons and tons of patchwork on this track. And they said they couldn't put the actual jet dryers out because it would blow those patches up. So we didn't talk too much about the track itself and how with some of these patches, some of these repaving they actually did in the lower grooves around the apron, that it kind of created these different grip strips that guys were racing, patch to patch and down on the bottom there. That made it interesting. This was like the second instance, I think, where they've used these wet weather tires that are grooved tires that are kind of softer and do fall off pretty quickly. That kind of resulted in pretty decent racing. And I think Denny Hamlin has talked before about trying to say, and I think NASCAR has looked into it a little bit about at some point considering even on a race, a yearly basis to go to almost like a grooved tire with the next gen car, because it could create some more fall off and softer tires, and it'll be really grippy for a little bit, and then it'll start to fall off a little bit. So it's, and I think I don't know if it was Ryan or somebody throughout during this weekend had said, man, I wish we could run on these wet tires all week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some. They showed one of them come off the car for somebody, and it was torn up. The grooves were gone, and chunks of it were out. But that it did its job. I mean, and the thing is you ran it too hard if that happened. Too. I think they started with the dry and then they put the wets on, if I'm not mistaken. But we got 17 winning heat 2 there. I didn't really take a lot of notes on heat 2. That's going to be the outside line for Sunday. We get to the All-Star Open, the Open. The 48 and the 54 raced their way in the Open, and the 42 won the fan vote, even though he crashed in the Open.
Man, talk about, I mean, if people wanted action, hopefully they tuned in early for the Open, because those guys were in desperation mode. The 34, it's really funny with the way McDowell is, because we know he's a very clean cut guy, like, family man, all that stuff. But when he's behind the wheel, he's a totally different person. And he even said he didn't try to, because he got involved in an incident with the 54, kind of squeezed him 3 wide at some point, and he gets in that crash with, I think, the one with Gregson and everybody else in there. And basically takes him out of the running, and he waited around for the 54 to come back around the track during a green flag run and got in his way. And he didn't intentionally wreck him, though. I think he actually even said he couldn't afford the fine. So, but there was, if you're looking for action, man, and I always say this all the time, like if you're at these cup races, if you go to the Coliseum or whatever, like get there for the early stuff, get there for the heat races, there for this last chance race. Like that's where a lot of the action is going to be in the weekend, and hopefully people are there for it.
Yeah, here was a short run, okay, and these guys were like, you got to get up there if you don't get up there. So everybody kind of ran all out, nobody was like tire conservation mode. It's like there's only 2 spots available. We have to get to those 2 spots. So yeah, it changed it a lot. We go to the All-Star race. We got the 200 laps, caution at lap 100 here. 99 ended up in the pole. Ryan starts 11th. We have 24 cars in the field here. And the inside lane should be better on the restarts, so at lap 2, Ryan's up to 7th. At lap 8, he passed the 20. He gets up to 6th. I mean, it's right there in front of him. At lap 15, we're talking about, saving tires. The next lap, we get the caution for the 47, helped by the 43.
Yep.
And this is where, this is where partially where the 15 or the 5, shows off what he can do. They talk about splitting the guys in front of them, how many pit, they might stay out. Most of them stay out in front of him, and 9 cars end up pitting. And these 9 cars get fresh tires. And I say fresh, only going to be 16, 17 laps fresher, but like you said, there's fall off, and you can run the tires differently from here to the end of the stage. You don't have to conserve as much either, because you can get to the end of the stage a little bit better. 99 chooses the bottom. Ryan chooses the bottom, ends up losing a row, but he figures being, there is better move.
Is this when the 5 gets the speeding? Does he get the speeding penalty when he comes down to get these tires too?
Yeah.
So so all those guys that did come pit to get fresher tires, they're ahead of him because he speeds. So people talked about, after this race that he had to pass everybody to win it, and he legitimately did.
Yeah. So, the restart lap 20, he sorts out to 8th here. Lap 40, everyone's conserving tires. The 5 car on new tires is the one who's coming. And now this is, so 20 laps into that restart, the 5 car passes Ryan. 20 laps in, gets to 9th. At lap 44, the 17 passes, and we're back to 10th here. And Josh says the longer we run, they'll come to us, basically saying you keep running good lap times, and the guys in front of you who are using their stuff up will come back to you. And he tells them there are a couple guys with fresher tires coming.
Taking them a lot longer, though, than the 5 car.
Right. Yeah, the 5 car was, like you said, he was set up really well. Lap 53, past the 24, we get to 9. And the lap 55 is when the 5 takes the lead. So what do we got here? This restart was a lap. So it took him 35 laps, on his fresher tires. At lap 73, we pass the 19. We get to 8th. And now at lap 74, here's some more fresh tires. Now here's how good the fresh tires were. They passed them on the outside here, these next 2 guys. 23 car. So Ryan's back to 9th at that point. At lap 80, the 45 comes around the outside. We're back to 10th. Lap 90, the 5 has a 10-second lead on second place. And at lap 96, the 23 actually gets himself all the way to second. Lap 98, we have the 8 car in the way. He's a lap or 2 down, and he gets in Ryan's way here and screws up Ryan. So the 1 gets by because of this, and Ryan gets back to 11th here. Then we get our caution for the halfway break. So Ryan, there's only 16 cars in the lead lap at this point. The 19's the lucky dog. They're pitting going in 11th, and they come out 9th. The NASCAR app did not give us the time on that one for some reason, but it was good enough to gain 2 spots. The 1 car was speeding on pit road, and this buries him. And now we're up to 8th. And now this is the problem. Like I said, now we're going to get the 5 as leader. He comes off pit road as leader. Ryan takes the bottom also to try to make sure he, gains some position on some of the cars on the outside line. But the restart's at lap 110. So we got 90 laps here, and they're green the whole way. Nobody, this basically everybody just gets behind everybody. Ryan sorts out to eighth. Lap 120, the 5 basically is checking out. Lap 140, real quiet on the radio. He's about a half second back of the 14, running almost the same lap times. Like I said, they're within a tenth of each other every lap. At lap 150, yeah, that's what I said. My wife actually says it. She calls it the paint drying 200 at that point. Lap 170, Josh says, keep me smooth. But the problem is, like I said, everybody is doing the same thing here at this point. Everybody's hoping somebody else makes a mistake. Everybody's hoping that somebody else burns up their stuff, but everybody's doing such a good job with conserving their tires that nobody is like gaining that advantage. Nobody's smoothness is any better. It'd have to be 3 to 4 tenths a second better to not only catch somebody, but then to be able to pass them. So at that point, the 5 car's got a 4-second lead on the 23. Lap 176, he does pass the 17. He gets to 7th. And what's happening is some of these cars are starting to cancel their save mode. In other words, the 14 and the 9 are coming up behind him, and they're trying to get past him. At lap 188, he does pass the 99, and the in car shows the 99. He just bobbles the heck out of coming out of turn 4 and slides up out of the way.
Because they battled for a very long time. They actually, because since there wasn't a lot happening on track, they did show it on TV for a little while, and Ryan could keep getting up to his bumper. Not enough to really move him though. So, but then I wasn't sure. That's why I asked you kind of what happened, because I was like, would Ryan finally get him and shove him or what?
No,
99
he just
moved himself.
Moved himself. He come out of 4, and the back end just wiggled and it went up the track enough and went right underneath them, and got the pass within half a lap. He didn't have to really battle much. So he gets to 6th at that point. The 5 car wins, and all the fun stuff happens afterward. But like I said, it was, for the nostalgia part of it, it was great. The car itself has to improve if they go back there. I really don't have a problem with it being a point race, to tell you the truth, because a points race will give 2 stage breaks. Tire wear will become an issue. You put 36, 37, 38 cars on the track instead of 24. You're going to have more natural cautions happen, because guys are going to have to run a little closer to each other sometimes. And having enough tires on the wall at the end of a race,
Yeah, that's the big thing.
5 or 6 cars stay out with 10 laps or less to go on a late restart. Yeah, there's going to be some different things, but this format just didn't work with this format,
As I said at the top of the show, it's just so funny how nobody wanted gimmicks. Let's not make it gimmicky. Let's not have all these extra stage breaks. Let's play it out like an old school race. And we got what we asked for. Yeah, it was funny, 50 to go. I'm like, this would have been a decent, maybe 50 to go wouldn't even been decent. I think like 30 to 20 to go would have been a interesting time to have some sort of a break, because now I know there was only 15 or so guys on the lead lap, so maybe there wouldn't have been as much strategy, but maybe a handful stay out just to see what happens. Mm-hmm. And that would have created some excitement. But then again, people would say that's manufactured excitement. That's not a real race, yada, yada, yada. So I also heard the people saying, do you really want a points race here and see, another 100 or 200 laps of that? And it's like, well, it'd be a totally different race. Just as you said, just repeating the same points, 36 plus cars on the track, probably would be a little bit more natural cautions. We would have the extra stage break. So I would probably much rather see a points race there than another all-star.
Well, it's time to move on, I think. There was some
plenty of post-race activity.
But nothing that
nothing we can really add to anything. The one thing that I did find funny is I don't even know if I should bring it up. There's a fight in the stands. There's some video circulating of the fight in the stands, and being the inquisitive journalist that I am, obviously, you get the police reports out there. It mentions who's in it. It mentions who the apparent aggressor is, and I'm just doing the searches on finding that person. And it's funny when you can look up people's social media profiles and click on it and be like, oh yeah, I'm not surprised. Or or I think that specific person was, had like a bunch of tickets and they were trying to sell leading into the race, and it's like they didn't know that they were going to have a bad time, and they had a bad time. So, but yeah, typical other types of things happened over the course of the end of the race. But what are you going to do? Like you said, good time to move on. We can
Ryan had a little, his normal comment afterward. Said I had a fun night. 6 is probably the highest we got to, and where we finished. And I thought we could run overall. It wasn't a bad night. He says we didn't have winning speed, but it was a fun night for sure.
Yes, so, that's what I'm saying. It seemed like the drivers actually kind of liked it. I'm sure they maybe would have wanted the opportunity to pass a little bit more, but honestly, I don't know what to believe. There could be a race with tons and tons of passing, and they'd still be getting interviewed at the end of the race and talk about how hard it was to pass. So I never know what to really take from some of their interviews there. But it seemed like some of them had a good time. But I think they were also captivated by the energy and the nostalgia and just getting back there to race somewhere they haven't really raced at in a long time or ever before. So, what's your take on a repave?
Like I said, I don't think you need to do it. Because, like I said, we got to fix the car first.
Sure, I understand that's a problem. Here's my problem with the track. I didn't like that they're pretty much racing out of the groove the whole time. And normally when you think someone's racing out of the groove, you're thinking the top side of the track. These guys are like racing on the apron the whole way around. So that's my only issue with it.
That was the other thing I thought about. It would have prepped the track with some Ryzen or something would have maybe.
I don't know. Helped. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting watching them on TV, like racing from, grip strip to grip strip or like patch to patch. You could see them aiming the car for them and then, kicking it off of it. But yeah, I don't know. That's my only thing for saying maybe they should just repave. And there's got to be, I think Marcus Smith talked about it, that, they've said when they go to repave any of their tracks going forward that they own, that they plan to use a new type of paving technology where it would be asphalt that could be a little bit more abrasive. And I'm like, how can they, in all this time, have not already come up with that? Really. So there's got to be some scientists out there that can figure this out. But I'm guessing they don't want to go too far and then just have a tire. You have to, run the hardest tire of all time so they don't blow. So I guess I can maybe see that there could be some science problems with it, but who knows? It was still fun. It was interesting to see, that track looked like a lot of short tracks around the country do, and we kind of see that week to week. So,
yeah, kind of cool thing about we start going to our summer schedule here of recording on Tuesdays instead of Mondays. And what's nice about that is sometimes there's some special announcements that come out on Monday that we seem to miss, or sometimes they come out Tuesday. And I think we need to talk about this one right here. That the Cherry Lime car was announced this week. The pictures are out now. It's not top secret anymore. What'd you think of the car?
Car looks great. I think Body Armor's really hit it out of the park this year between the water car and this car. I can say in the past with some of the cars, like the Edge car that I know some people did like, and some of their others I haven't exactly liked them. There's a lot of fans of that graffiti car they ran that I still wasn't necessarily a huge fan of. But I think with this car, with this Cherry Lime kind of camo scheme, and the water car this year have been fantastic, and they're definitely ones that I'm hoping he has some success this weekend, because it's going to be one that I might want to get in a die-cast version.
Yeah, the camo look is really, really cool. And it's in cooperation, I believe, with Operation Homefront. It actually literally says it on the Body Armor bottles if you read them carefully. So they're doing a nice thing with charity there. So if you get a chance to read that, check that out on the bottles. Go ahead and get some. It's a really good flavor,
The other cool thing too, just like they did at Atlanta with the water car, it does look like they're going to have the merchandise and some of the die casts already ready to go for folks that are at the track and go out to the souvenir hauler. So we saw a ton of people at Atlanta over that weekend wearing all the shirts already. So they do have a shirt and a hat. The hat looks great for this Cherry Lime car.
We went to we will be going to the Penske shop this weekend coming up. So we'll be getting, maybe I should put a thing out there where we can just Venmo me some money and we'll mail them to you. That'd be horrible, because I bet you 20 people would probably say, "Hey, yeah, get me one of those. Hey, yeah, get me one of those." Because, but I think Penske's already got them in their shop, their merchandise store. So I'm sure you can get them online pretty soon. I know they had both sizes of the die cast already, so I'm sure I'm going to pick up a small one of that. And the hats are really, the colors of the hat are really, really cool. I'm not quite into that mesh
Old school rope look.
Yeah. That's an Admiral thing. Is that rope gives you that Admiral thing. I think that's kind of a little nod to Roger, actually. So that, yeah, but if you're into those, the color scheme itself is really, really cool with the blacks and the reds and the camo on there. So, they posted some pictures of it yesterday. Can't wait to see it on the track.
So one thing the All-Star race was, and that was not a points race, but we might as well just recap once again what the NASCAR Cup Series point standings look like. And I'll run through the top 10 here. Ross Chastain is in first with 429 points, followed by Christopher Bell, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Martin Truex Jr. in sixth, Ryan Blaney in seventh, Keselowski in eighth, Larson in ninth, Tyler Reddick in 10th. So again, Ryan is in the seventh position in the straight up point standings with 381 points. That's 48 points back of the leader. That is Ross Chastain. And all of this leads into the second crown jewel of the NASCAR Cup Series season. And that's going to happen this weekend with the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And why don't we run through the NASCAR on TV report for Charlotte Motor Speedway, where the coverage is all going to kick off on Friday, May 26th at 6 p.m. with the ARCA Menard Series General Tire 150. That's on FS1, followed by the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series North Carolina Education Lottery 200 at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on FS1. Switch it over to Saturday, May 27th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Xfinity Series ASCO Uniforms 300 on FS1. And then later on the evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we get NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying on FS1. And I'm assuming they're doing this in the evening time, because of it being the 600 being one of those races that transitions kind of from day to night. So that's probably something good to see.
Yeah. One other thing, this weekend will be the special broadcast of the Xfinity race too, right? Isn't this the
drivers
only, I believe, right? Am I wrong? I think that's right.
I think it is. And if it is, Ryan's usually in the booth for that one. So that would be kind of interesting to see. I think Kevin Harvick is usually the lead commentator, and then it might be Harvick, Joey and Ryan, something like that. So I think that might be this week for that one. Give some of the regular TV guys a break that might be covering the race on Sunday, because they're in there for 5.5 hours or so. Speaking of Sunday, May 28th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Cup Series Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Everything else all weekend long has been on FS1. Finally, we switch over to Fox. Also worth mentioning that this is like Motorsports Christmas. You have the Monaco Grand Prix for the Formula One cars happening early in the morning, Indianapolis 500 in the afternoon, and the NASCAR Cup Series to cap off the evening. Gone back and forth of whether we'll make the drive up to Charlotte for the 600 this weekend. Don't know, but if not, I'm going to be glued to the TV pretty much all day long. And hopefully, Steve, when you're up there, you'll kind of get a front row seat to the action. Yeah,
I don't think you're allowed to come. Right now it's a 50% chance of rain. I think that's because Adam is about 50% chance of coming.
That that's pretty accurate. We do bring the rain. Oh man. Speaking of some other things that aren't that exciting, let's talk about Ryan Blaney's stats at Charlotte Motor Speedway out on the oval. Now, he has had an uptick in performance over the last couple of years on the oval, but let's take a look at it. Average start of 15.3, average finish of 19.7, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 3 DNFs, including crash in last year's 600. He also had an engine expire in 2018, if you remember that. I think that was that ball of flames.
We were there for that.
You were there, right?
Yeah, that was. He was out of the car. Josh was telling him what to do to go, and he was out of the car before Josh even knew what was going on. Yeah, it was crazy.
So, but yeah, over the last several races here, going back to 2020, and which 2020 was a little odd because I think they ran the oval twice, making up races during that first year of the pandemic. So finished third, two back-to-back third places, third, 13th, and then 29th last year after he was involved in that crash. He only made it 195 laps, so he barely made it to, well, almost made it to halfway, so didn't make it the whole rest of the way. So statistics at Charlotte aren't that great. What do you think about that historically, and then also maybe paired with some of the challenges the Ford manufacturer cars have had on intermediate tracks this year? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's going to be the problem. Is what do we do? What kind of strategy do we need to do to get ourselves up there as the race goes on? Truthfully, though, I like his chances on mile and a half if there's long green flag runs. This is a thing where we talk about the tire conservation that we were talking about earlier. In the short track situation, it doesn't work at all. But in a mile and a half situation, you have a wide range of areas that you could run in and have problems with your tires in a long run. And Ryan, like I said, is really, really good at tire conservation, running lap times, and being faster on a longer run. So that's really what I'd like to see, is a lot of nice long green flag runs where they get, even green flag pit stops in even. But the 600 usually isn't conducive to that. Actually, the 600, because of the way there's an extra stage break in there, halfway point. They broke the stages up where they're even pretty much, and you don't get a lot of green flag pitting. There's usually caution somewhere at the right point in each of those stages. So
it was definitely a candidate last year, I believe, for race of the year. There's a lot of excitement going down to the end of that race. I think there's a point when Austin Dillon had made like a huge sweeping move that potentially could have won the race. It still ended up going into overtime. Based on my notes, they actually went 413 laps, so they went 13 laps over the normal 400. I think the race went like 5 hours and 15 minutes or so, which I think is more like the fifth longest Coca-Cola 600 in history or something like that. So if you are going to be there, this potentially could be a really long race. As of now, you're saying what? Rain was in the 50% chance or 50%, so.
And it's far enough out where it doesn't tell you like what part of the day, how often,
Yeah, could be totally hit and miss, but hopefully it is a really nice weekend.
If there's some nice windows in there where they can get, get an hour or two in, and then if there's a little shower and it comes through quick enough and they get back out there and clean it up, that's all you can hope for if it gets that way. But who knows, man? It could always just go all the way around it too. We've seen races where, there was rain all around the track and never hit a track too. So.
Let's take a look at the last several race winners just on the oval at Charlotte Motor Speedway. I'll go back to 2017 when Austin Dillon won the 600. Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and then Denny Hamlin won the 600 last season. I know we didn't get to do a fantasy recap for the Wilkesboro race, mainly because there was no fantasy to do unless you're a part of the daily fantasy group. But anybody on that list kind of strike you? I mean, I think we have to take a really big look at, guys like Hamlin, guys like Truex that are in Toyotas. And, another one, Bubba Wallace is on a pretty big hot streak right now. So he might be another guy that could pop up and win this thing, but you got to survive, all 600 miles of this race. It's extremely kind of long, grueling race. I'm not sure what the temperatures are going to be like, but I think those guys might be the ones to look for.
Yeah, the Toyotas is what the first place I would look. Practice qualifying Saturday night kind of give you an idea how well the cars are set up too, because if they set up pretty good and somebody lately the Keselowski and Buescher, those guys have actually been running real well for the Fords. So, like I said, I see practice qualifying and see on that. But Bubba's definitely a guy I would look at this point. Right now, he is driving really, really well, and it shows.
So I mentioned no full fantasy recap, but I will, again, just like I did with the cut point standings, give an update on what the overall standings are in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. We have a tie for the 9th position with no hesitation in Sam Speedsters with 2,419 points. Tie for the 7th position with Mez 12 and Blaring Idiots with 2004-22. And 6th is Penske Fan 24 with 2004-36. And 5th, we have Epic Chickens 1916 with 2004-78. 4th is Go Larson, 2004-82. 3rd, Christian Dana, 2004-95. 2nd, Blaney's Daisy, 2005-05. And leading the way in the first position, the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League is Factory of Sadness 6, 2,530. As I'm reading this, Steve, it just reminded me of something that happened over the past week, and that is the fact that the team owner or the person behind the team that is Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, who currently is in the 29th position, tied for 29th overall with 2,308 points. He lives. We found him.
We found him. He found us, which is great. You should get a hold of him and see if he wants some sort of swag. We owe him something because he's not only been so good at fantasy, but he's got one of the better names in fantasy racing history. I get a laugh every time you read it. All I can think of is that movie with Bert and Jim Neighbors, the fastest chicken in the South, It's really funny. A lot of really cool things have happened since we had that interview with Ryan Blaney a couple of episodes ago. Tons of amazing feedback, tons of downloads and video views across all of our platforms. And actually that interview is what I think sparked us to actually find Clyde finally. So I think he finally tuned into an episode of the podcast and then started listening, and then here we are. So congratulations if you're listening once again for your last 2 fantasy championships. This year, he even admitted isn't going that well, but there's still time to catch up, I think. So one other thing that's going to be happening this weekend, we've talked about it all year long. We had, Leah Blaney Reeves on to talk about it, and that is the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation has an event coming up on Thursday night, the 2nd annual Drive for Good Top Golf event at the Top Golf University in Charlotte. And Steve, I know this is something that you're really looking forward to. And can you give folks just some, last minute details on what's going to be happening? Yeah, one of the things is the silent auction will go online, I believe, Wednesday. If you're downloading this today, Tuesday night or Wednesday during the day, they'll have it going all the way through to Thursday night's event. Silent auction, online auction. They haven't really announced a lot of the items yet, but some really cool stuff last year. And we're heading down Thursday during the day itself. We'll get there hopefully in the afternoon for the event with our friends Jerry and Kirsten, who golfed with us last year, actually, in our group. But it's a great time. They did a fan accessible ticket this year, and it's really going to be cool to be able to do that. And hopefully we'll send some pictures and so forth back toward Adam's way so that the Team Blaney accounts can post some pictures of the action, some videos of the action if we can get it out of there with some good Wi-Fi. And they definitely look at the online auction. And also, they got ways of donating the card. I see it over your shoulder there. It was get on the Wall of Fame, right? Yeah. Wall of Fame. Yeah. So, donate 50 or more to that. They'll not only put you on the Wall of Fame, but then they'll autograph your card and send it to you. And that's a really cool thing to do. Mine's, I have mine's actually on our board out in the living room. We have it actually displayed so people can see it. But it's a really, really cool little thing to do. If you can't be there, go ahead, donate a couple bucks. It goes to a great cause. And like I said, the auction, look at the auction items. Don't outbid me if you see my name on it. Try not to. Oh man. Because there'll be some really cool stuff to look at and bid on. Definitely. So, Steve, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. And I want to thank you, everyone, once again for tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about myself or co-host Steve, just listen to our very first episode that explores our Blaney racing fandom. You can interact with us on Facebook and Twitter at Team Blaney, on Instagram at team.blaney. And finally, I'd like to encourage you to support the aforementioned Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Established in 2018, this organization supports causes like the Alzheimer's Association and UPMC Sports Medicine through fundraisers, events, and membership in the Blaney Bunch Fan Club. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on any of their very active Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram
and other social media accounts. But for now, and for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Hey, good night, Brussels. Hey, make sure you check out the TikTok. Thursday night, I promise I'll do a TikTok from the event.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.